Hey guys, had a little bit of a scare there. The computer froze, and luckily I was able to recover most of the painting. So I'll just start continuing from here. But let me open some of the photos that I was looking at earlier. Like I was saying before, just a ton of photo reference and things like that. But some of the things that I just wanted to talk about really quickly are, in a picture like this, this is a great example about temperature. So we have such a cool temperature shift happening over here, and as we start getting closer to the sun, which is obviously very warm, we get that warm atmosphere right over here, and as it starts pulling away from that source, it's starting to cool down and things like that. And over here we have a really nice array of cool temperatures. So this is a really cool photo to look at for some of that. Let me find something else over here. Great picture for atmospheric perspective. The sky tone is definitely affecting this mountain back here and really pushing the distance. These plants in the foreground over here are definitely the same plants that are on this mountain, but we just don't get to see the detail nor that color because of the atmospheric perspective that's happening. And so this is a really good example. We see some of the clouds back here, or it could be a mountain line, but the soft edge of that is really, really nice. We see a very slight amount of mountain back here as well, and it's really pushing the distance. So this is actually a really cool photo to look at. All the darker tones here in the foreground are very, very strong. So I can turn this into black and white, and you guys can see how it's darker up here, and as it's pulling away further, it's just getting lighter in value. So let's continue over here. Just make sure I'm going to save this more often, just in case, which is actually a good lesson for you guys as well, just to make sure that you guys are saving your files and stuff like that. So one of the things that I was going to talk about is the shapes up here become very, very different than what's happening with the shapes in this organic, kind of alien shape. So I just want to adjust a lot of these shapes to make sure that they're, basically following the same rules. Maybe extend some of these out just to show how far these things are getting into the background. But one of the great things about doing this straight in color is that we really get a nice richness of color. And, with my experience doing a black and white painting and then painting right on top of that to get, your color is, it's a good exercise to do. However, you don't really get that nice richness of color that's actually really important in a color piece. So instead of spending your time doing a black and white painting and then doing it in a color right on top of the black and white, I think this is a much more effective approach in terms of getting some really nice color in there. So that's why I'm just jumping straight into color. We're going to spend a good amount of time doing some color pieces. The duration of the class is all going to be in color, so this is going to be a good exercise for anyone actually to do some more color pieces. And yes, if you're not too comfortable with color, there might be a struggle in the beginning, but with practice, I guarantee that you'll get better and it'll become easier. And with anything, you just practice it more and more and more, and you just get better at it. So art is going to be no different than like sports or anything like that. So whoa, something shifted over there. That was kind of weird. There we go. So just following my guidelines, I'm just sampling tones from my actual painting. I'm not having to worry about anything else really. The beginning steps of the piece really established all the information that I really need to know about this piece. You know, the first colors that I laid down, the temperatures, and the just the basic color palette was very it was very important to figure that out in the beginning. So once that's all figured out, then you're just sampling from the piece, and it becomes a much more straightforward experience from there. So just like in some of those photos, I want to, lose some of the edges, and I want to lose some of the, some of the sharpness as things get further and further away. Now, what might be kind of cool is, let me experiment here a little bit. This part right over here just seems like it comes to some weird abrupt stop. So it might be kind of interesting if, and I'm doing this on another layer just to make sure, if I don't like it, then I can get rid of it. Now this might be kind of cool just to see if I could figure out a really cool area around here that's going to allow this thing to flow more better. Maybe there's one really far back here that you could just hint at. You barely see any of the edge, but where you do see the edge, you could definitely play up the same shapes that you have over here. And keep in mind, look at how I'm starting to change my colors as it's going further and further away in the distance. I want to make sure that it's following the same color palette, so it doesn't really stick out and become look like it's doing something weird. Now I can definitely make a little bit of a centerpiece out of this area over here. Now here's one thing that I'm starting to run into, actually, that's good to address right now. This main shape is actually starting to become dead center in the composition, which is not something that I normally like to do. So what I can do really simply is extend one side of the canvas out so that the center point of this piece isn't really right in the middle. It's going to be more sticking out to the third proportion that we like to follow. So let me just finish this little area right over here, and I'll get to that in a second. This is actually a kind of cool area right here that I'm working on, because you can kind of tell the audience or the viewer how it's actually kind of connecting into the ground. Is it like spider webbing out, or is it just dug straight in like a dagger? So over here is a really kind of cool transition point where you actually get to see the shape of this thing and how it's kind of forming into the ground and stuff. It's pretty cool. So alright, so let me save that, and really quickly talk about extending this area out over here, or to the left. I'm going to extend it out further to the left. Just want to get some better form read in this area. Now, definitely, this area is starting to scream out more attention and you know, become somewhat of a focal area. Alright, so here we go. Now I'm going to grab my crop tool and basically just drag it along the outer edge of this whole piece. And simply, I'm going to just pull this left side over and just press enter. Now it's extended the whole scene. Okay. What can I do to fill in this extra space? You know, I could paint it, you know, but well, what I can do really simply is grab a selection of this area, go to copy merged, which is over here in edit, copy merged, and I'm just gonna paste it back in there. So go ahead and paste, and what happens is it copies everything that I just selected into one layer. It's really handy. So what I could do here is I could literally just extend this out, and it becomes seamless into the piece. Now I've started a little bit of you know, composing this thing in a different manner. So what I want to try to do here is make sure that I get this shape to feel like it's more, you know, taking up all this real estate over here. So it doesn't feel like it's just doing this halfway split down the middle. Not like that. So we want to stay away from halves. So what are some of the things that we could do? We could definitely plop up some more of these mountains back here. Press save again. So hopefully it's a valuable lesson to you guys. Save your stuff off and never know what's going to happen with your computer. Hey, I could definitely have another shape back here that's, you know, you could actually get to see maybe the height and actual massiveness of this weird monolith. So I just want to make sure I don't get too detailed into it because it is so far away. I just want to capture the essence of the shape, you know, the silhouette. So it might have this like triangular kind of swooping top. Now, if we did this correctly, it'll definitely start. You could definitely have the viewer relate these shapes together, and they'll basically assume that the top of this big one over here that's more visible on the right, it has the same shape at the top, because we're using the same basic shape language, you know, with these arm-like tentacles kind of coming out and, you know, going all over the place. So sticking with the rule of three, you know, we have one big one over here, we have one in the distance. Now I can definitely use the rule of three to do one more. And maybe somewhere around here would be good. Maybe all we have to do is indicate that it's the same shape at the top, you know, the swooping triangle. Maybe add in a couple of those tentacle arms. And now we see it off into the distance. Maybe we can show one back here as well. Now we can refer back to the grayscale layer over there at the top. Now it's still reading pretty well. Now, definitely not using any actual photo texture in here, but we're letting a lot of the brush work sort of almost indicate that there is texture, especially with the way that you apply the brush onto the canvas, is a really good way to indicate that. I'm going to go ahead and put an overlay layer on top of all of my painting and go to my big soft airbrush and sample this dark right over here. And I'm just going to paint really softly some more darker value into this area. Now I'm going to look at it over here and make sure that it still reads well as a thumbnail, and if it's not, then undo it and try it again. So I'm really going to pump up some contrast now. I'm going to use the lasso tool to cut out some of these shapes and really get some of this tone, this really white, one of the brightest tones that are on the page, to pop out and give me some nice atmosphere here. This atmosphere is also going to create some of that nice contrast that I need to draw the eye into that area. So there could be something interesting and kind of whimsical happening in this area right here that's causing all this light to come out. So carving out some of these shapes, make sure they read. Now I'm starting to see that some of them can be overlapping on top of each other, on top of, behind, just creating more space. And actually what I want to try here is to actually get some interesting tones in here. Just kind of like it might be glowing in here, like some kind of cocoon or something, So how am I going to do that? All I did right here was plug in some of the blue tone just to see, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a new layer, and I'm going to put an all black layer on top of this. All black, and change it to color dodge, and then use my airbrush again with like a lighter value color, and come in here, and that color dodge is going to intensify that glow. Now I don't want to have too much over there because it's not really in my ideal focal area, but it'd be nice to have just a hint of this, and then I can go back to an area more in my desired focal area, like right over here, to get that done. Now I can make it larger and more dominant. Have some smaller bits here and there. And then go back to the color dodge layer and pump that up. Now what I could also do is to follow that whole idea is definitely show some of this color on the water over here as like a reflection. Something like that. Just like, you know, some of the pictures I was looking at. They're not here anymore. But, you know, the one with the warm tones in the sky, you know, and the water. It was just kind of doing a mirror image of the sky on the water. So with that kind of idea in mind, I'm placing, you know, reflections of this light definitely on the water over here. Now, just as a good measure, I'm going to repeat some of that over here. I'm not going to make it as intense, obviously, because first, you know, they're further away, and I don't want to get too much attention in the background. We could almost think of this thing as being an energy sucking alien you know, monster or something, and it's drawing the energy here, you know, upwards into, you know, I don't know, something. So if I design it once over there, I want to repeat it in some of these other areas. Just key points. And we all get to see that from a distance. I'm going to do another color dodge layer. So again, new layer, open it in black, change the layer setting to color dodge, and I'm just going to basically intensify that blue a bit. Put on the ground as well. Another overlay layer with some of that dark like I did before, and I think if I adjust some of this dark, it's going to really pop out some of that glow. It's going to make it pop a lot more, something like that. Yeah, there we go. So a couple of new things that I'm doing here than were apparent in the previous weeks are using the color dodge and using a lot more of the overlay layer to kind of just subtly adjust the values and whatnot. And now I think we're starting to get somewhere. You know, we could have you can indicate some like electricity kind of action kind of going on. You know, it's just like an extra bit of some cool stuff. want to overdo it because I don't want to take away from just the core part of this thing. But now it starts to become maybe just a little more interesting in this one area over here. I'm just using a hard brush to do that. Alright, so just to really quickly recap some of this, let's check the black and white. And you see it really pops in this one third kind of area over there. And you got a couple more in and around the composition. So first started off just like this, basically sampling some colors from a photo, just painting it up, following the same rules: foreground, middle ground, background, atmospheric perspective. Then I threw this overlay layer on with the blue, and that's what completely changed the whole entire piece. Adjusted some values with curves, and now I just started painting it up, getting some separation, smaller shapes. Now making sense of some of the shape language here, so different from this area down here, from this area over here. Extended the canvas out. Now it gave me an opportunity to definitely repeat some of my shapes, adjust more value, pop in some interesting element there, that's really getting some nice contrast, and finally, adding in those electrodes and stuff. Actually, yeah, that's basically it. If I wanted to take this piece a little bit further, I could definitely, pick apart some of these areas over here and get some more separation. And come in there with another brush and kind of mimic the same tree line kind of thing going on, but it just helps break down the shapes a little bit more and more. So that's basically the demo for today. Starting off very simple in the beginning, same process. Now we're just adding in color and tone. I don't necessarily expect, a huge array of color in the pieces right now, because definitely want to start off very monochromatic. And this piece is more about atmosphere and using color as atmosphere rather than color to colorize a piece, So there's not like a bright sun that's getting a bunch of saturated colors here and there. So this is more about just using the reference as just a starting point. So as far as assignment goes, I'd love you guys to do 5 color studies. Okay, and the color studies could be based off of gathering photo reference and kind of doing a piece like this. You could do your own inventions, like your own concept art of maybe something like this, maybe something alien and whatnot, something like that. You could do fantasy. You could also just do studies off of photography. But the first thing I want you guys to do is just get used to where colors sit in this color picker over here, because the way Photoshop works is value goes up and down and saturation goes left to right, and to see where a lot of these colors lie, you see how desaturated this whole palette is until we get basically in this area over here, and it has to do mostly with value. The saturation of color isn't that great over here. It never really gets beyond this middle point right here. If we started going over here, it gets really saturated, but it's more about value. So with that being said, let's try to really keep a good eye on our values. Definitely put a layer of hue saturation on there just to be able to check them every once in a while. And let's just do 5 studies. So I'd recommend you guys do like 1 a day, something like that. Spread it out. Don't do all 5 at once. The learning process is going to be much better if you do kind of like 1 a day and spread them out. So let's do that, and we'll definitely start getting into some cool concept design stuff, once we get a little bit more comfortable with color. So hope you guys enjoy the demo, and I'm looking forward to your assignment. Thanks.